to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We are part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me, as always, on Wednesdays, is my good friend Alex Spears. Alex, what's up?
What's up, Down to Dunkers? The Flukies here from Germany, Andrew. Do you know what time it is in Germany right now?
Nice. Is it...
Any guesses?
It's like the afternoon?
It is 4 It's almost 4 p.m. there.
Okay, there we go.
It's more convenient for fans overseas to watch our show than it is to watch the actual games because they've come on at like the middle of the night.
It's true. Glad you're here.
Hopefully Glad you're here.
Be as exciting as the Thunder were on Monday night, which was like actually decently exciting, right?
Very exciting to the point that I was pissed afterwards. I was genuinely upset that they had lost, which is good because I don't know how many times I'm going to feel that way across this season.
Won't be many.
I really wanted them to win that game because I hate the Clippers, and it would have been a fun night on Twitter after that game if we had won. And so, I was disappointed. And so, if any of my tweets seemed a little too extreme for 8 games into the season, that's why. I just wanted the guys to win, Andrew. That's all.
just wanted my boys to win.
I'm just a Bally sports guy.
The Thunder's record right now is 1-6. You know what what the record was last season through 6 games?
Oh, I would guess through 6 games. Were they 500?
They were 2-4 through 6 games, which doesn't really match my memory, right?
No, not at all.
But you know what happened after that? They went on a 3-game win streak.
Wow.
After that. And then we're 5-4. They beat, they beat Brooklyn, they beat the Knicks, and they beat the Pelicans. So they beat the Pelicans by 1. January 6th, they beat the Knicks 101-89.
That was the game. Well, that was the back. I guess they weren't back to back, but the 2 New York games. That's when Hami went crazy, and that was probably peak. Like Hami is a changed guy. Oh my gosh, is Hami a long-term piece? That's what we were talking about 1 year ago.
Hami off the bench, 23, 11, 2 assists and a steal, only 1 turnover.
Pretty awesome. We weren't even thinking trade at that point.
No, he was legit good. Only took 2 threes. He was 1 of 2 from 3, 8 of 13 from the field. He was legitimately good. And this was kind of like the best version of the Thunder last year, where the starting lineup was SGA, Dort, George Hill, Bazley, Horford. And then you had a good Hami off the bench. You had Teo, Poku came off the bench and put up 7 and 6 in that game. Yeah, and like Muscala, Kenrich, that was the rotation. Like nobody, that's decent.
And now freaking Hami is only getting 6 minutes.
What is up with Pistons? That was weird. And for a Pistons team that's getting crushed last night, nonetheless.
Destroyed. By the way, update. Oklahoma City no longer last in point differential. Shout out to the Pistons. No longer worst in net rating. Shout out to the Pistons. No longer the worst offense in the league. Shout out to the Pistons.
Huh. I wonder who's abnormally bad now.
Yeah. Like, honestly, what's the difference between them and us? Is it because they play Jeremy Grant and Kelly Olynyk? Doesn't that make it worse?
Yeah.
They're paying all this money for free agents and they're still this terrible?
Yeah. And like we have Shea, right? Like he's clearly better than anybody on that team. Anybody on that Pistons team. And also we have the better rookie in Josh Giddey.
Ooh, yeah. So last night the Pistons blown out by the Bucks 117-89. Cade Cunningham, it's his second game. We're not gonna overreact, Andrew, but shot 2-14 from the field, 0 of 9 from 3, put up a 6, 2, and 3 in 29 minutes.
It was rough. I went back. You started texting about it, and I was trying to finish a podcast at the time, and I was like, "Oh, well, that's interesting." So I fired up League Pass, and went back and watched, and it was really rough, man. He had like one like mid-range jumper where he kind of curled off a screen and hit it that looked nice, but other than that, he was straight up like horrific on defense. I mean, he was getting lost off ball. On ball, he's really just not very big. You know, he really is probably should be the point guard for them. But the problem is that Killian Hayes plays on ball as the point guard for them, which seems like a problem.
I know. I would much rather take him out of the starting lineup, Killian Hayes, and just find another shooter, whoever it is. I don't even know if they have another shooter, but put someone else in there so
At
that
least
you.
play for like Frank Jackson or Corey Joseph next to him.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound good either, though.
No, it doesn't. But this is the whole point. Like when people talk about OKC's development and how it's like bad for the players, like you can watch a Thunder game as we have done, and like they're looking like a good offense. Like, well, not a good offense. They're obviously the second worst offense in the league, but like they're running sets, and you can see that players are being put in positions outside of Baisley, perhaps, to succeed. And then you look at Detroit, and like the whole idea was that they were bringing Kelly Olynyk to help out Cade Cunningham and to have all these veterans around him. Of course, that I don't know. It just annoys me to no end because their plan seems just as dumb and less strategic than what we're doing.
Yeah.
And no one cares.
Yeah, no one cares.
No one cares. They scored 89 points.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, in Cade, it's only been 2 games, so perhaps he will turn the corner. I actually kind of expect him to turn the corner and to look good, but if Giddey looked like Cade has so far,
dude,
takes would be scorching.
I was thinking about that. Yeah, if Giddey came out and hadn't been what he's been, if he had a start like Cade Cunningham, or Sam Vecini posted some early stats from like Trae Young, Brandon Ingram, who are also really terrible in their first 10 games. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine what I would be like? Because I was already like, I was at the cliff's edge, Andrew, in summer league. So if Giddey had come out and been bad, and now all of a sudden we're thinking, even if it's not true, but we're thinking, what if we just missed? Like year one, we already missed on our first top pick. Like I would be going insane, and this would all seem so much worse. Like obviously they have a bad record; they're 1-6, but we're still feeling pretty positive because we're looking at Josh Giddey, and it's like, oh, I think we have something like significant here. This is great. I'm having a great time. I don't really care if they're losing; they're being competitive and everything. If he had been like Cade, if he had started out like Cade. Oh my God, it'd been miserable. We'd have to delete the pods later.
Yeah, I don't know if we could do it. I don't know if I could do it. Thank you, Sam, for taking Josh Giddey, because I don't know if we could. I don't know
because you know what Pistons fans are doing right now. They're like trying to pull out any positive. They're probably like looking at his 3 assists, like, oh, that was a really great read by him. Meanwhile he's shooting like 2 of 14. And we would have been doing the same thing, like, if Josh Giddey was what everyone said he was going to be, just like awful defensively, no scoring ability whatsoever, can't get around anybody. We would have been like, oh, but he had that really one nice pass. It was a nice swing pass. It wasn't actually an assist, but it was a hockey assist, and I think that's pretty cool. That's something to build on.
Very few players could make that assist, but
thank God we're not having to do that.
He was good. He struggled in the beginning of the Clippers game, but like went after Paul. Like, but they had Paul George on him, at the end of the game, and there were 3 plays that just kind of stick out to me, where like one, he had that pull up mid-range shot with Paul like all over him, which was very impressive, and the drive by 2 where he kind of had that hezzy dribble, went around him, got all the way to the bucket. That's just something I didn't think he'd be able to do, especially against a tall, long defender like Paul George, Paul is still one of the better defenders in the NBA, and like Josh just got him, and maybe he caught him off guard, perhaps. But still, it was very, very good. Like very,
And
very
and
nice move.
and for me, it's not even like the success rate of those plays. Like that's the bonus. Like just the fact that he's confident enough to even
Hmm.
think to try to pull a move on Paul George and hit a pull-up jumper in his face. Just the fact that he's even thinking about doing that is
Hmm.
so far from what I thought he was going to be coming in. Just because I just didn't know what he was going to look like scoring wise, and to already have that confidence, and then he's successful on a couple of these. I mean, he didn't have a great shooting night, but like he has those flash offensive plays. We're like, wow, this is way more than I ever would have hoped for a
Yeah,
19-year-old in his first 10 games.
yeah, he's been tremendous. Obviously, he like leads the class in assists and like every like
I'm guessing
passing
I'm guessing by
category.
like a significant amount. Who is even
Yes,
second in assists right now?
it's Jalen Suggs at 3.6,
Yeah.
and he's at
Hey,
5.9.
I was looking at the assist totals. Why do you think? Because Shea and Giddy had the exact same potential assists,
Hmm.
10.4 per game.
Hmm.
But Giddy almost has double the amount of actual assists. He's like 5.9 right now, and I think Shea is down at 3.6. Do you think
Yeah,
that's just like small sample, who they end up throwing to and who's taking the shots? It must be, right?
I just think Giddy's a better passer, like just straight up.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like it feels too early to like take that stat and extrapolate that and say, "Oh, Giddy's obviously a
Hmm.
better passer because of this." But I just thought it was interesting that they have this discrepancy, even though they both are clearly creating those opportunities at the same rate.
Yeah,
But you watch the games, and especially at this point in the season, it was different the first couple of games. But at this point, it feels like Josh Giddy is going to be the primary initiator long term. That's how it feels right now.
yeah. I mean, he's the better on ball creator for others, and Shea is the better on ball creator for himself.
Oh
That's
yeah, and speaking of that, like Shea was insane in that
yeah.
game.
He
Like,
was so
incredible. That the 3rd quarter, I mean, the way his step back always looked a little awkward to me, like, last year
sure.
when he was first kind of trying it out. We were first seeing it, like, regularly,
Hmm.
um, and I do feel like maybe it's gotten a little bit more compact, like, a little bit more efficient than it
Hmm.
was last year, because it still looks like I don't know, he looks different doing step backs than a lot of the other players that I'm, like, used to seeing doing step backs. Like,
Yeah.
there's just something about his style, which is true of his drives as well. Like, just something the way about he moves his body,
Hmm.
is so unique to him. There was actually a podcast, PD Webb, you know him? He's the draft guy.
Hmm.
He's doing a new sports science podcast with a physical therapist, and
Oh.
their second episode was all about Shea and about
Oh.
how weird he moves his body, like how
Give me
unique
that
it
link,
is.
bro. Give me that link.
I will send you the link. It's a good idea. I wish it was a YouTube show because they're talking about like his movement, and you just want to be able to see it as they're talking about it to know like what they're describing.
Yeah.
Um, but they brought up some interesting points, and one thing I like that they brought up is they described the way he gets to the rim as he has an expanded root tree, which is something you hear about in the NFL when you have a wide receiver who can basically do all the routes you would ever want him to do. He just has a
Hmm.
crazy route tree, he can run everything you would want. And they said they feel that way about SGA, where it's like when he starts going to the rim, like you really don't know what he's going to do. Like he's
Yeah.
going to end up at the rim, but he has so many like weird, goofy moves as he gets there that is very unique to him in comparison to other players. But yeah, his step back, like I don't know. I guess I'm just a full believer now, and it just looks so unique. But it was working, and like he's shooting these moon balls, like
Yeah.
where his legs kicking out, and it feels like he's shooting to the heavens, and it just looks so cool when it goes in. I don't know. I was like beside myself during that Clippers game. He looked so good.
Yeah. Again, it's like this, like these third quarter moments from him where he just puts it all together and just takes over the game. I mean, I feel very confident in saying that he was the best player in that game. Paul George had his moments, ended up winning the game, but I thought throughout the entire game, it was clear to me that SGA was the best player on the court.
Yeah, and maybe him playing less on ball, which it seems like he is already doing, playing more off ball. Maybe that'll end up being good for him because just all the other parts of his game are just going to go up a level. Because I do think those are the parts of his game where he's going to become like super elite. I mean, we already see it in his drives, but maybe this isn't like a perfect comparison, but kind of like the John Wall, Bradley Beal backcourt, where like Beal was the primary scorer. He could still handle the ball. We've seen Bradley Beal put up really good assist numbers, but John Wall was always the guy kind of like setting the table for most of the possessions. He wasn't seen as like the best scorer on the team. Maybe it would be something like that offensively going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, that would make total sense. So far this season, SGA, just compared to the other guys in his class, he's third in scoring at 22.9 points per game. I'd have to imagine that will go up as his efficiency goes up. He is second in free throw attempts per game to Luka at 5.3. And that's an interesting number just because free throw attempts are just down overall.
Yeah.
Free throw percentage is overall down as well. Some people blame the new basketball, and the attempts are down just because of the rule changes. Like, I think, he actually has the exact same amount of free throw attempts per game that Trae Young does right now.
Which is wild because I think Trae was up at like 9 last year.
Yeah, and a lot of it was Trae doing the things that they were like, yeah, we're not going to let you do that anymore. That was how he got those like extra 4 every
It's so
game.
funny. He's tied with Trae and James Harden. They all have 5.3 attempts per game.
Yeah, it is. I'm really interested to look at this stat in like 2 months to see if guys that typically drew a lot of fouls like recalibrate and figure out different ways.
And that's why you look at the top, Jimmy Butler averaging 9 a game right now. Like, how absurd is that for him to do it? Like, you kind of understand why Embiid and Giannis are still at the top and Rudy Gobert too. But the fact that Jimmy Butler is that high, I mean, that's why people are talking about him for MVP, because what he's doing right now with these new rules is like so incredible.
And he's such a power player, whereas guys like Trae Young are more, they're like finesse, like I can get anywhere I want with my dribble and I'm going to make you foul me because of what I can do with my dribble. Where Jimmy's like, no, I'm going through you and you're going to foul me. And that's just, I mean, that's the Heat's mentality. Like watching them against Dallas last night. They're just tough as nails, man. And they're making shots. They're playing just bully ball like all the time. Like it's Bam, it's Jimmy, it's Kyle Lowry. They're really fun. And then Tyler Hero's obviously been really good to start the season too. So that's been a really, really interesting team to watch. But back like Shea in that class has been tremendous. And you just wonder, because it was very clear it was Trae Young had a better season last year than SGA did because of injury and then what Trae did in the playoffs and all that stuff. But I just wonder, 3 years down the road, do we feel the same way about those two? Because I think Shea has a game that isn't reliant upon, using one of the rules or one of the foul calls as a way to gain points or to do something. Like he's just like straight up like playing the game and has been since he got into the league. So I just wonder how these rule changes will change the way that we think about this class in general. Even Luka, Luka being at 5.7 free throw attempts, and not like dominating the league like we kind of hoped he would, is just also pretty interesting too, because he used a lot of those tricks too. And so I think this season will be like a lot of like recalibrating. What can I do? How can I change in order to get those 4 or 5 points back? I feel like there's probably a lot of these players that feel like they have, had those points taken away from them with the rule change.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting what's going to happen with the ball, because wasn't there a season where we started with a new ball and they eventually switched it? Like 20
but that was a it was completely different. This ball is probably slightly different, and part of it is that all these basketballs are brand new and they're not worn in at all, and maybe that's part of maybe we get 4 weeks or 5 weeks into the season and things feel a little bit better for them. But like these are the same leather ball, it's just made by a different company.
Yeah.
Those balls were they were completely different material. They were just completely different in every way. And it was just a bad idea by the NBA.
I'd like them to
Uh,
play with, when you go to the gym and there's like the one gray ball that's had everything stripped off and it almost feels like it's like a carpet feel to it.
yeah.
I want to play with
Yeah.
one of those. It's slightly like underinflated.
Try this, guys, and see how difficult it is for us at the Y. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know I don't know what to think about the basketball stuff. I think it's a nice excuse for now, and things have been different, but
Yeah, it's really
I don't
helpful
know.
if your team is doing poorly right now. Like Blazers fans, they're like, "Yeah, this ball is an issue." Like Damian
Yeah.
Lillard has never shot this poorly. It has to be the ball. I'm sure Celtics fans feel the same way. It's a great excuse right now to cover up actual flaws on your team.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's very strange.
But going back to
Very,
like
very strange.
the vision for OKC's offense,
Mm-hmm.
the third guy that I feel like it already fits and makes sense, and maybe we'll get into the rotation questions, is with Jerry, who, by the way, turned 21 today. It's his birthday.
You did. Happy
Happy
birthday,
birthday,
Jeremiah Robinson
Jeremiah.
Earl.
Happy birthday, Jeremiah. He just fits within the flow of the offense so well, and
Yeah.
he'd probably end up being the fifth option on like a good starting rotation, at least offensively. But he's the type of guy where I see Teo, I see Bays taking all these threes per game, and I was like, why can't we get more of that from JRE? Like we saw the game where
Mm-hmm.
he had like 8 attempts. Like he's the guy where I kind of want him to be getting those type of shots because he
Yeah.
already plays within the offense so well. And it just doesn't feel like he's getting as many opportunities as some of the other guys. I think he played 23 minutes in the Clippers game, which is solid. He's a rookie. I get it. But he's the guy that I already want to see more from him. I mean, I want him like installed in the starting lineup like permanently at this point. I would just like him to be there.
Yeah. He fits. He makes the right decisions. He plays hard. He's like Villanova does a good job of developing their guys, especially the role player type of guys. And once they get to the league, it's like, okay, they're ready. Like Jalen Brunson made an impact pretty quickly once he got to the league. And,
Mikal Bridges.
Mikal Bridges, JRE is doing the same thing. It's easy to see why they selected him and why they traded, 2 picks, like 2 pretty valuable picks to get him.
Yeah. But yeah, and then beyond that, that's where it starts getting murky for me. Like, who do I really want to see playing? And I guess this can lead into a discussion of Bazley, who did not have a great game. I think
No.
we'd say. Interestingly, of course, I tweet about him taking all these threes, and then he hits 2 in the second half, and his percentage ends up being like 38% from 3. I didn't look it up, but that might actually be his best shooting night on the season so far.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference for me with Bays in comparison to even someone like Teo is that Bays's shots are so inconsistent. Like even when he's hitting some of them. So in that game, I went back and watched all the attempts, and there's 2 air balls, like just straight air, just like totally off shots. Like, and one was really funny because JRE was underneath the basket and like swatted Bays's shot away from like to try to knock it back out as a rebound because it was so far underneath. And I think that's the thing, because even with Teo, I mean, he wasn't good either. I think he was 1 of 5 for 3, and he doesn't look super confident. But I trust his shot a lot more than I trust Bays, even when Bays is hitting a couple now and again, just because the shot looks a little bit more consistent.
Yeah.
So I I don't know. I know that there are still Thunder fans that really believe in Bays. You know, Rylan Stiles, Locked on Thunder. He's a big Bays fan, and I totally get the arguments for Bays. I mean, again, he's the same age as JRE. Like they're both 21.
Yeah, they're just a few weeks apart.
Yeah,
Maybe a couple
and
months apart. Yeah.
he did not have that type of Villanova training, obviously, because he took the year off and did the internship. So in that way, like he's obviously more raw and more of a project player. I guess for me though, it's like you look at their draft picks going forward, and we know because it already happened that OKC is going to have to give up on multiple guys who are 22 years or younger. It already happened, like with Hami, Moses Brown, and there were some Thunder fans who were upset by that, but it was a relatively small minority. Going forward, like they're going to be guys that they're just going to have to give up on because of space and because of bringing in new rookies. And I just wonder, and that's why like I'm trying to be a little bit more aggressive with my base takes because we've already talked about it. Like he's in year 3. We're 10% of the way into the season, into what we feel is a make or break season for Bays. And I have yet to see anything to convince me that he is developing any type of consistency, that he's developing any type of like flow within this ideal offense that we have in our head for what the next Thunder team is going to look like. And that's why I tend to be a little bit more negative on him than some of the other players.
But you were defending him last week, Al.
I was, because there's a part of me that like agrees. It's like, yes, he is only 21. Like that's crazy. He's 21. Why am I being so much harder on Bays than I would be for Poku, or in this case, frankly, even Teo? Like, why is that? And part of it is the way he plays in comparison to those players. Like Teo, I feel
without a doubt the way he plays.
It is because Teo, even though I mean, you know my opinion on Teo, I've never been like the biggest fan, but you can see where if he does develop his shot, which again seems to be a little bit more consistent than Bays, just like the form of it, he already fits within the offense. Like you see it, you see the vision there. Even if I'm not the biggest fan, Bays, I'm just like still waiting to figure out like what would this actually look like, and I've yet to see it. And the turnovers in that game, like,
dude,
first of all, like if you go and look at the players who have had 7 turnovers in a game this season, it's like superstars, super duper stars. To even be put in a position, to be in a position where you could have 7 turnovers in a game is really hard in the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, like every good player that we just talked about, like Luka, Ja, like all those guys are on the list of guys who have had 7 turnovers or more this year.
Sure.
And I went back. By the way, I didn't know you could do this. Like, I know you have Second Spectrum. I did not realize that the NBA.com has interactive box scores where you can just click on Darius Bazley's 7 turnovers and just watch them all and see how they happen.
Bro. Yeah, bro.
I had no idea. That's great. I love that.
That's great.
I watched all Giddey's assists. I watched I watched all of Baze's just shot attempts, just to see like what did I remember?
So sorry.
Yeah, but his turnovers, it's like he had 2 traveling turnovers, which whatever. It was him like trying to make a move at the 3-point line. That's something he could fix game to game. The rest of them were just the loose handle on these drives.
Yeah.
And do you know Polar Fall? Skyfall? Do you know that guy?
Polar Fall, Skyfall?
I don't know what his account is. I follow him. Polar Fall. At Polar Fall. No? He's a draft guy as well. But he's been talking about how strange Baze's movements are, but not like in a good way. Like he has all these clips showing like Baze should have gone off on this foot on this play. He should have been taking a layup with this hand on this play. He's talking about how like his movements as he makes his drives just do not make sense compared to the way most players would take them. Yeah. And I think that's really interesting because obviously it's something like biomechanical that I don't really understand, but I know it because I've watched him drive so many times and it's always looked off in some way. Yeah. And I do wonder if that's a piece of it. But yeah, like just, and obviously the final turnover was the most egregious because he's driving into a double team. Doesn't look like he's has any interest in passing out of that, and he turns it over. And so I just don't know. I don't know what to do with Bays at this point. They say that, all these other players need to eat their broccoli before they can get their Skittles. It feels like, it's just like a big bowl of Skittles for Bays every game. You just do whatever he wants.
I know it is weird compared to other players where like Poku even has a great game and it's like, yeah, great job. You don't get to play.
Right.
And Baisley, who and he does it's funny. He doesn't do the right things and maybe this is part of it. And McKelly pointed this out in a text the other day. That like he doesn't defend with the correct hand in the corner. Like he's always using the wrong hand to defend shots in the corner
See,
where guys
it's stuff like that.
can just blow past him. And I think a lot of like the drives are like footwork issues too. Like those are and I'd like to ask Mark about this, just what his thoughts are on Baisley and what he can do to improve. But it always feels like he's using the wrong hand or the wrong foot or something. There's just something off about it where it's like you said, like there's not a cohesion there. And then and then just like the decision making stuff just is pretty poor. And he doesn't fit cohesively within the team. He has moments where he does, but it's more flashes. Like he flashed some of that during the Lakers game. And but I mean lately he plays like he's the star of the team, or one of the stars of the team. He doesn't play like he's a role player on this team, where it's clear to anybody who has watched all 7 of these games that SGA is the best player on this team. Josh Giddey is number 2, and then Lou Dort is probably number 3. And then number 4, I wouldn't even consider Darius to be there. He's been more involved than anybody else outside of those 3, but he certainly hasn't been good. Like he hasn't been a helpful player outside of the Lakers game. And the problem is, and this is where you can talk about like Dort and Giddey and say that they can help this team outside of making shots. It seems like the only way that Darius is helping is when his shot's going in. And if it's not, then he's just not going to be very helpful.
Yeah, and on the flip side, it's like again, we all agree this is an important year for Bays, and
Mm-hmm.
because of the contract situation that's eventually going to come, and so maybe it makes sense to be playing him all these minutes because like, why do we care? Like we're the ones talking about wanting a high draft pick. Like he's
Yeah.
not impeding the team there. So is it
No.
really that? Should I really care that much? I don't enjoy watching him play basketball right now, how he's playing,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not like hurting the long-term goals of this
No, no,
team.
no, no, no. And maybe this is just like, hey, listen, you got 5 months to iron out all these issues, and we're going to get as much tape as we can, and we're going to work with you as hard as we can to see if we can figure out some of the defensive stuff with you, some of the playmaking issues that we have with you. Um, let's get as much of a sample size on it that we can, and we're gonna if we can iron them out, like wow, we have a nice player. And if we don't, then they're gonna have to move on, in my opinion, because there's going to be guys coming in that need a look, that will need minutes. Obviously, Poku is going to need minutes. He's going to need more minutes than he's played so far this season. Uh, they have to make way for somebody else. And honestly, I think this next draft will be pretty interesting because they'll draft a big most likely if they're at the top of the draft, and then maybe you do move on from Baisley and you play that big with Poku and Dort and Giddey and Shea. Like that's still probably not a very good team,
Yeah,
at
sure.
least next year. And you can see the path to, okay, they can do this one more season at least, and if they draft Paulo or Chet or whoever it is, and then bring in another player, then it's like, okay, well, now we're really, really working with something. You actually have a chance to work with something.
What do you think? Because we talk about Bays kind of like playing out of sync with the rest of the offense, or at least what we think the offense would normally look like. But do
Mm-hmm.
you think that team needs a player like that long term? Like, is that like there will eventually be a star player who comes in and demands those type of possessions, that type of volume?
I would kind of hope so, because
So
I think outside of Shea, there's just that they don't have that kind of player, and you need
right.
those kind of guys to win in the playoffs.
So in that sense, like, is Bays serving a role right now by kind of being the stand-in for that player? I mean, I feel like you could do that with Poku as well. You could
Sure,
give him those shots because he probably has the confidence to do that as well.
he'll take him. Yeah, he'll take him.
And really, the whole Baisley discussion comes down to, like, who are you wanting to see minutes from? If somehow Poku was also getting 25, 30 minutes a game right now, we probably wouldn't care that much. But
Mhm.
it's that we're seeing some of these guys down the roster that we personally would like to get more looks at, and they're losing out minutes to someone like Bays, who's consistently going to be averaging 30 minutes per game for this team. It
Yeah,
feels like,
yeah,
and Teo too. I mean, Teo's minutes have been pretty high as well.
yeah. What's interesting about like the Poku Baisley debate is like Poku's been more efficient this season than Baisley has. Obviously, with less opportunity. And it's not like he's been like wildly efficient, like, oh, he's been so good. Like he's 50% effective field goal percentage. Like that's not great, you know, but it's a lot better than 42% effective field goal percentage, you know.
Yeah,
If Poku could stay there, if Poku could just be normal bad from the field, 42% from the field, like that feels like a big step forward for him, you know, if he could stay around 42%. Because last year he was 34% from the field. That's abnormally bad. But
yeah,
if we can get to the normal bad and that's a big step forward for him. I think that's great, and maybe that's why they're like taking this slow. It's like, great, you need to stay around this, field goal percentage wise. And I don't think they talk field goal percentage, but I think they talk about like shot quality and things like that. And those are ways that he can improve and can play. And you can see, I don't know if I would say the Clippers game for him was like it was a step forward or if it was a flash. I don't know yet. I would like to say it was a step forward because he's starting to put some stuff together. But he was actually super good against the Clippers.
yeah. I mean, any time he has those games where it feels like he's just playing within himself, and that the opportunities he is taking makes sense. Because I mean, that was kind of the issue last year. Like, I mean, it was fun to watch, but he would just like take shot attempts that just would not be advisable ever, even if he was good. And
Yeah.
we just chalked it up to, oh, this guy's super confident. But it does feel like the plays where he's having success are plays that like project to be plays that he would take later in his career. Like
Hmm.
he's playing within himself. He's playing within the offense a little bit more, at least for that one game. I know it hasn't been like that every game, but yeah, you just want to see more. I mean, 15 minutes in a game where he's playing well, it felt like it's disappointing.
Hmm. I wondered about the Clippers and if you feel differently about the Clippers than you did to start the season.
No, I don't think this team is falling off a cliff anytime soon. I mean, obviously, if Paul George ever got injured, that would be massive because he is
Hmm.
carrying this team. But there are still so many things they could do. The biggest one being not playing Eric Bledsoe or playing him less minutes. I retweeted that stat about the on-off numbers so far. Of course, it's early in the season, small sample, but like he looked like the player that was everyone talked about last year in New Orleans.
Yeah.
He looked like that player, like terrible, like
Hmm.
very harmful for your team, and he's still getting starting guard minutes. Like the whole idea of this was like, oh, he was just pouting in New Orleans. He wasn't playing to his potential. Like,
Hmm.
dude, there were so many plays in that game where he brought the ball up and would just lose it, like barely pressured. Like he just couldn't handle the ball. And again, maybe that's the new ball, but like There were multiple plays like that.
No. That's not the new ball. That is not the new ball. Did you see the play where he drove in and bounced past it out of bounds?
Yeah,
And there was
it was just
nobody
weird
around.
stuff.
Like nobody around. You know what his effective field goal percentage is? We were talking about Baisley and Pokus and how bad they were.
How bad is it?
38%.
And so that's the thing. Like at least from the outsider's perspective, that feels like an easy fix. Like you don't have to play him. Like Luke Kennard is fine. Like you just play Luke Kennard or Terrence Mann, whoever. And then they're eventually going to get Marcus
Kennard's
Morris
already playing like 28 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Is Kennard a 35-minute a game guy?
Well, the thing is, like, they still have so many dudes injured. Like, if they just get Ibaka and Marcus Morris back, all of a sudden this team is going to, I think, look
Is
fine.
Ibaka going to play?
Why wouldn't he?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that is he still effective is a question.
Yeah.
That I have.
But I definitely think Marcus Morris is going to help. Like he's
Marcus
fine.
Morris, he'll at least take shots.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I if this team ended up like at the 11th spot in the West, like right out of the play-in, 10th, 11th, somewhere in there, that's kind of where I'm expecting them right now, based on what I've seen.
Feels right.
Which is good. Like that's good for the Thunder. Like that means that's a 10th to 13th pick or whatever, somewhere in there.
Yeah. I mean, if the Thunder had the 6th and 10th pick in this last draft, I think we would have been pretty pumped.
Yeah, we would have.
So and I think that's where we're headed. The Clippers roster they were really bad against OKC. It was really unimpressive. Like there's a lot of Isaiah Hartenstein happening and a lot of Justice Winslow happening. And guys that are their names, but they're just not good. Reggie Jackson looked like the Reggie Jackson that we had seen in the past and not the Reggie Jackson of the playoffs. Like it looked like, oh, okay, like that's what he is. Terrence Mann is not the preseason podcast version of Terrence Mann that everyone kind of hoped he would be. He's 8 points a game, shooting 37% from the field. Like that's not great. There were a lot of guys that were just like imagined to be better. Even like Nick Batum. Like Nick Batum didn't really do it for me in that game. And he's playing a lot.
So much of it is just the 3-point shooting. Remember, this was the best 3-point shooting team, I think, of all time last year. I feel like that was a stat because they shot like 41.1% as a team. And you look at some of these guys, like Terrence Mann, he shot 42% from 3 last year, currently shooting 25%. Nick Batum shot 40% from 3, currently shooting 29.6%. Reggie Jackson's currently shooting 29%, and he shot 43% last year. So there has to be some, I don't know if it's called like positive regression. Like they have to come back a little bit. They're not going to shoot 32% from 3 for the season.
It won't be this bad, but do you think this could be an actual regression though? Because like Paul George is still shooting 41%. Kennard's 44%.
Luke Kennard shot 45% last year. Oh my god!
You know what I mean, though? Because those are all guys where it was like, Reggie Jackson is shooting 40% from 3. Like, what's going on here? Nick Batum is alive again. What's up with this? This is so crazy. Wow, what are they doing there? Terrence Mann came out of nowhere. Sometimes players like have these weird seasons where they shoot the ball really well, and like all those guys are. I mean, it would be a little bit more surprising if all of those guys were 40% plus moving forward in their careers than it would be if they like all crashed back down to like 31, 33%,
I mean, it could have been a team-wide thing because Rondo shot 43% for the Clippers last year in only 18 games. Even DeMarcus Cousins in 16 games shot 42% from 3. Like every single player on their team
feels more unsustainable than what's happening now. And not that they'll be like in the 20s, but like I would guess Reggie would be like 32% from 3 and Nick Batum would be like 33 or 34%. It doesn't feel like, man, like Reggie Jackson's not one of the best shooters in the NBA. Like he's just not. He played like it last year, but he was also in a contract year, And I don't know how you turn that off and turn that on. Like, I don't know how that works. But to me, like Reggie, like let me look and see what he is for his career, because he's has
34.8.
Yeah, 34.8%.
Man, the craziest thing about
That seems about right.
But his basketball reference is that through 6 games this year, he's taking 9.2 threes per game.
Yeah.
Whereas like even last year in that great season, he's taking 4.2. I mean, they are really relying on Reggie Jackson, which is great for the Thunder.
It's great. Keep doing it.
I mean, I don't see them falling off a cliff, because I do think they're going to try to. I mean, they have no reason to not win.
They'll win. Yes, I mean they are trying to win games. They just haven't been successful at it so far. But I think after this next stretch, I think we'll know. I think we'll know a little bit more, because they got Minnesota. They have two games in Minnesota coming up, and then they have Charlotte, Portland, Miami. After those 5 games, we may know more, because if they lose 4 out of those 5, it could be, oh boy, like they could be in trouble if that happens.
And the other thing that we have to pay attention to is the teams traditionally below them. Like, who is going to jump up and pass the Clippers? So, like, right now, our best hopes are the Kings and the Timberwolves, which, I mean, both of those teams look better.
Yeah.
Than they did last year. We'll see if they keep it up. I don't have any faith in the Spurs.
No.
And then the Rockets are definitely
just never want to watch them ever again.
Yeah, me and Andrew really struggled through Spurs week.
Yeah.
There's just something about them.
There's actually nothing about them. There's nothing about them is the thing.
It's just tough. It's just tough. But the other team, and I've seen some Pelicans fans already tweeting like this, like, should we just tank this season? Because they're 1-7, and they've been competitive in all these games. I mean, their point differential is a lot better than the Thunder right now, but they've been
a lot better,
losing so many games. And at some point, and now, like, Zion's not even getting checked for 2 to 3 weeks.
How do you pull the plug, though?
I don't think there's anything to do. I think you're just bad. I think this team might just be terrible, because you look at the lineup without Zion, and it's so much younger than it was last year.
Yeah, what are you though? I mean, what are the Pelicans?
Well, that's the thing. Like, for what's his name, David Griffin, it feels like if they're terrible, like, he's gone.
Yeah,
this year. So he probably
should be. He's been bad, man. He's not done a good job. Look at this roster. I mean, there's not, like, what do you want on this roster? I like Nikhil. I guess I like Ingram. Trey Murphy. That's where I draw the line.
They legit could have 2 wins by the end of November. Like, they play at Sacramento, at Golden State, at Dallas, Oklahoma City. That's going to be a big one, November 10th. Then they play Brooklyn, Memphis, at Washington, at Miami. Like, that's their next, like, 10 or so games. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel for them. Besides the fact that they're playing really hard and they're competitive in all these games, you think that eventually at some point they're going to pick up a few wins.
Yeah.
But they are a new tank opponent that I was not prepared for going into the season.
At least they extended Valanciunas,
Yeah, they can lock this team up. Lock them up.
Baby. All right, I got to go.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to our podcast.
Bye.
You join us on November 15th. Alex will be there Monday against Miami Heat. Against the juggernaut Miami Heat. Come to OKC to see the sixth man of the year.
Who?
Tyler Hero.
Oh, Tyler Hero.
Wow. Join us. We'll have a pre-game podcast that, if you already have a ticket, great, you get to attend. If you don't have a ticket yet, you better just come early, because there may not be a spot for you. So come early to that. Join us for the live pod, and then we will all walk over together, go into the game, sit together, make up a really annoying chance, make our presence felt at the game, and then we will go down on the court together, take a picture, do a half-court shot competition, win a Thunder prize. It'll be great. So please join us. That's November 15th. Go to Down to Dunk's Twitter page and click the link. Buy your tickets. It's great. It's not very expensive either, so join us that night. All right, Al. Have a great day, everybody, and we will talk to you guys again on Friday.